Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What does it look like when a franchise is simultaneously falling apart and pulling itself together at the exact same time? That is the strange, disorienting, and somehow oddly compelling reality of being a Boston Red Sox fan right now, and if you have been paying attention this weekend, you already know exactly what I am talking about. Welcome back to Red Sox Focus, and there is a lot to unpack here today. Let me start with the obvious. This past weekend was not just a baseball weekend, it was a spectacle. Late night news cycles, early morning press conferences, the kind of front office drama that felt less like a professional sports organization and more like a reality television production. It was chaotic, it was exhausting, and for anyone deeply invested in this team, it was a lot to process. But here is the thing that sometimes gets lost when the noise off the field gets this loud. There were still games being played. Actual baseball games with actual results that actually matter in the standings. And in the middle of all of that organizational turbulence, the Boston Red Sox went out and took 2 out of 3 from the Baltimore Orioles, moving to 11-17 on the season. That is still last place in the AL East, and nobody is going to pretend otherwise, but it is also their first series win against a divisional opponent this year. In the context of everything else happening, that is not nothing. Now, the off-field storylines have been covered extensively here on Red Sox Focus, and if you want the full breakdown of everything that went down with the managerial situation, those videos are right there on the channel. What I want to focus on today is something a little more forward-looking. Specifically, what did Chad Tracy's managerial debut actually tell us about how this team might operate going forward? Because beyond the noise, beyond the headlines, there were genuine on-field signals in this series worth examining closely. Some of them are encouraging, some of them raise questions, but all of them matter if you are trying to understand what the next chapter of this Red Sox season might look like. First, let us acknowledge what Chad Tracy inherited walking into this situation. He becomes manager mid-season, without a full coaching staff assembled, without a bench coach in place, and in the immediate aftermath of a clubhouse that was sent into an absolute whirlwind. These players, regardless of how anyone feels about Alex Cora's dismissal, had to be processing a significant emotional disruption. That kind of instability does not just evaporate because there is a new name on the lineup card. It lingers, and it tests people. Which is part of what made Garrett Crochet's performance in this series feel so significant, because you had a pitching staff and a roster that could have very easily let the moment swallow them whole, and largely they did not. But before we get into Tracy specifically, the player who deserves his own moment here is Garrett Crochet. After what felt like a difficult stretch where he was clearly not himself, Crochet looked like a completely different pitcher in this series. He was sharp, he was confident, and perhaps most tellingly, he was smiling coming off the mound. That image alone communicated something important. He looked like a guy who had found himself again. And for a Red Sox team that is going to need him to be a frontline presence all season long, seeing him return to form is as important as any managerial decision Tracy could make. This was a massive development. Then there is the performance of Ceddanne Rafaela, who was white-hot throughout this series with 5 hits in his last 2 games, including 2 triples and a double. He is playing with a burst of energy and confidence that this lineup desperately needs. And then there is Romy Gonzalez, who managed 2 home runs in the series and finished with 7 total RBIs. Yes, one of those came against a position player, and the circumstances were unusual, but if the output helped him rediscover his timing and rhythm at the plate, the results are what matter, and the results were encouraging. Cavan Biggio also had a hit in every single game of this series, quietly contributing in the way that he tends to do. These are not world-beating offensive numbers by any stretch of the imagination, but they represent a team that is starting to find some consistency, and that matters right now more than almost anything else. And then there is Marcelo Mayer. The conversation around Mayer and how Tracy intends to deploy him is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting subplots of this early managerial era. Throughout Alex Cora's tenure, there was a clear and intentional philosophy around protecting young left-handed hitters from major league left-handed pitching. The logic is sound, it is genuinely one of the hardest developmental adjustments a young lefty has to make, and Cora erred on the side of caution, frequently turning to Christian Campbell or Eddie Montero in those matchups rather than exposing Mayer. The consequence of that approach, however, was that it limited Mayer's opportunities to grow through the challenge. He was being protected in a way that, over time, could delay his development rather than accelerate it. In the final game of this series, with the game still very much in the balance, a left-handed pitcher came out of the Baltimore bullpen, and instead of substituting Mayer out of the lineup, Tracy left him in. Mayer stepped up, delivered a single to the opposite field, and then stole second base. It was not a loud play. It was not a home run. But it was a professional at-bat against a left-handed pitcher in a meaningful situation, and he handled it. That is the kind of experience that compounds over time. That is the kind of at-bat that builds a hitter. And the fact that Tracy made that decision tells us something about how he views Mayer's role on this team, not as a prospect to be sheltered, but as a contributor who needs to earn his development through competition, not around it. To be fair, Tracy is also going to have to manage the very real reality that Eddie Montero is playing some of the best baseball of his life right now. Montero was phenomenal in this series. He hit the first Red Sox grand slam of the season in the second game, recorded 4 hits across 2 games, and added a couple of doubles along the way. You cannot simply bench a player who is producing at that level, nor should you. The balance Tracy has to strike is giving Mayer the competitive reps he needs to develop while also honoring the hot hand, and navigating that tension intelligently will be one of the real tests of his roster management going forward. There is also the question of where Christian Campbell fits into all of this as Mayer gets more exposure, and whether Campbell transitions into more of a pure defensive replacement role rather than a platoon piece. That is a conversation worth watching closely over the next several weeks. Now, the tactical element of Tracy's debut that generated the most immediate conversation was the base running. The Red Sox were noticeably more aggressive on the bases, recording 4 stolen base attempts, converting 3 of them, and yes, making a few blunders along the way. There were moments that were careless, moments that cost the team, and Tracy acknowledged as much in his post-game press conference. But he also made it clear that aggression on the bases is going to be a feature of how he manages this team, not a bug. He pointed to the athleticism and speed in this roster and framed the occasional mistake as the acceptable price of a more dynamic, pressure-creating offensive approach. The message was clear: stay aggressive, create things, and trust that the speed on this roster will produce more positive outcomes than negative ones over time. That philosophy is correct for this roster. The Red Sox have speed. They have athletes. For large stretches of this season, they have played in a way that did not reflect those tools, and the offensive results have been a direct reflection of that passivity. If Tracy can install an identity around movement, pressure, and tempo, it changes the nature of at-bats for opposing pitchers and creates a different kind of stress on defenses. The bunting attempts in this game, and there were several, though none were executed cleanly, felt like another signal of that small ball orientation. Whether that translates into consistent execution over a larger sample size remains to be seen, but the intent is the right one. There is one more thing worth addressing directly, because it matters for how we process everything that has happened this weekend. 2 things can be true simultaneously. It is entirely possible and entirely reasonable to believe that Alex Cora was made a scapegoat by a front office and an ownership group that has refused to be publicly accountable for the structural decisions that put this roster in its current position, and also to believe that Chad Tracy could be exactly the right presence for this team at this particular moment in time. Those 2 realities are not in conflict with each other. You can feel the weight of how Cora's tenure ended, feel the unfairness of the circumstances, and still find yourself genuinely curious and even cautiously optimistic about what Tracy brings to the dugout. His debut was 1 series. It is a small sample size, and drawing sweeping conclusions from it would be intellectually dishonest. But the early signals, the aggressive base running, the trust placed in Mayer against left-handed pitching, the willingness to lean on young players in pressure situations are the kinds of early signals worth paying attention to. This Red Sox season is not over. It has been painful, it has been chaotic, and it has tested the patience of this fan base in ways that feel uniquely exhausting. But baseball seasons are long, and the moments that end up meaning something rarely announce themselves clearly in real time. What is clear right now is that the conversation is changing, the energy in the dugout appears to be shifting, and there are individual players on this roster who are showing us something real. Let us know in the comments where you stand on all of this, whether you believe in the direction Tracy is taking this team, whether the aggressive base running philosophy excites you, and whether you think Marcelo Mayer is ready to face left-handed pitching without a safety net. The conversation is right there in the comments section, and Red Sox Focus will be here every step of the way to keep it going.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.